5 years ago, I traded my future for my little sister's scholarship. I thought the punishment ended with a judge and the word convicted stapled to my name. I was wrong. The real bill arrived at her wedding. My place card read, "Criminal Trash," and her new family laughed like my ruined life was the entertainment. My name is Jade. I'm 30, and I live above a nail salon where the air never fully stops smelling like acetone and citrus. The walls of my one bedroom are thin enough that I know my neighbor's TV schedule by heart. I work the front desk at a crisis center for teens, kids with anger too big for their bodies and bruises no one asks about. I file paperwork, schedule counseling, learn to keep my voice calm when a 16-year-old calls me a liar because calm is the only thing I can give them on a bad day. I used to have a different plan. I used to think my 20s would be normal. A career, a better apartment, maybe a dog. Then my sister Gabriella got her acceptance letter. Full scholarship, Ivy League. The kind of miracle Mom would call God's hand, and Dad would call finally. Gabriella was 23 now, but back then she was 18, and light was always chasing her. Teachers loved her. Strangers loved her. The world loved her in the effortless way it never loved me. The night everything broke, the rain came down like it had personal business with the earth. Gabriella had borrowed Dad's car just for an hour. She hit something on the highway, a slick patch, a barrier, another car. Memory is cruel that way, giving you sound and smell but blurring the sequence. Metal screamed. Glass burst. Airbags exploded with that bitter chemical sweetness. By the time I got there, she was shaking so hard she couldn't hold her phone. "I can't lose it," she kept saying. "Jade, I can't lose it." Police sirens were already threading through the distance. I looked at my sister's face and saw the scholarship evaporating, the future collapsing, the whole escape route closing. I didn't do math. I didn't make a speech. I made a move. "Slide over," I told her. I climbed into the driver's seat before the first cruiser arrived. When the officer asked who'd been driving, I met his eyes and said, I was. The lie was clean. Too clean. It landed like a stone and kept sinking even after I'd said it. Court taught me what a record really is. It's not a chapter you finish. It's a label that keeps reappearing in new fonts. I took the plea deal, took probation, took the mandatory programs, took the way people's faces changed when they heard the charge. I lost my internship. I lost friends who suddenly had concerns. I learned to smile while being judged. Gabriella went to school anyway. She called me from dorm hallways and whispered, "I'll make it up to you," as if time could be paid back like money. Our normal became a secret pact. I lived in the shadow of my conviction, and she lived in the sunlight I'd bought her. Mom and Dad tried not to talk about it. Mom worried in circles. Dad went quiet and heavy. On holidays, we acted like we were just a family, not a carefully balanced lie. Then Gabriella met Richard. Richard was polished in the way only money can polish a person. Smooth edges, calm voice, perfect posture. He wasn't cruel. That almost fooled me. He listened when I spoke. He thanked waitstaff. He told Gabriella she was brilliant like it was an obvious fact. He also came with an empire. Old wealth, finance, foundations with their name on them in serif letters. And he came with Sylvia. Sylvia was Richard's mother, and she didn't need to raise her voice to make a room shrink. When she first met me, she smiled politely and looked through me, like my body was a window and she was searching for the view behind it. A few weeks before the wedding, she invited me to tea at her house. Not tea like chipped mugs, tea like white linen and silver spoons, and a living room that looked staged for a magazine. She didn't stand when I walked in. "Jade," she said, tasting my name like something unfamiliar. "Thank you for coming." I didn't realize I had a choice, I answered. One corner of her mouth lifted, not warmth, a warning. "I had a background check done," she said, stirring her cup even though nothing needed stirring. "Due diligence. My family doesn't mingle with unknown variables." My stomach tightened. "You found my conviction." I did, Sylvia said. Her eyes were pale and cold, like winter light. And I'm not interested in your redemption story. I'm interested in optics. I'm her sister, I said. Not a headline. You are a risk, Sylvia replied softly. A stain in photographs. A whisper at board meetings. You will not attend the wedding. You'll call Gabriella and claim illness. You'll say you're overwhelmed. Pick a narrative, but you will not stand near my son on his day. No, I said, and it surprised even me how steady it sounded. Sylvia blinked slowly. Excuse me? I promised my sister I'd be there, I repeated. I'm not disappearing because you're embarrassed. Sylvia's smile sharpened, elegant as a knife. Then you'll learn what it costs to embarrass me, she murmured. Enjoy your stubbornness while you still can. I went anyway. The venue looked like it was designed to intimidate ordinary people. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, gardens strung with warm lights, waiters floating with champagne like ghosts. Gabriella in her dress looked like a different species, radiant, trembling, determined. When she saw me, relief flashed across her face so fast it almost broke my heart. You came, she whispered, hugging me too tightly. Of course, I said into her hair. I wouldn't miss it. Dinner was laid out like a social map. The closest tables to the couple were the richest. The further out you went, the less important you were supposed to feel. I found my table number and walked through a forest of centerpieces. Then I saw my place card. Ivory, embossed, beautiful, and in neat black script, criminal trash. For a second, my brain refused to process it. Then the meaning hit like a slap. A man beside me leaned in, read it, and laughed out loud. They actually wrote it, he said, delighted. A woman across the table giggled. Oh my God, that's brutal. Laughter spread the way gossip spreads, fast, hungry, safe because they thought I was powerless. Heat crawled up my neck. My hands went cold. I looked for Gabriella, and for a moment I didn't see her. I could feel Sylvia somewhere in the room, calm as a surgeon. I decided I would leave quietly. I wasn't going to make Gabriella's wedding the stage for my humiliation. I turned away from the table and took a step. A hand clamped around my arm. Gabriella. Her grip was strong enough to hurt. She glanced at the card, and the softness in her face vanished. She looked straight across the room at Sylvia, her eyes turning into something sharp and fearless. I tried to whisper, "Please, not here." But my voice didn't come out right. Gabriella didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout. She just stared at her mother-in-law and said, clear and cold, "You really don't want to go there." The air changed. Nearby conversations stalled. Even the music sounded farther away. Sylvia's gaze slid to us, polite, amused, as if this was a cute tantrum. "Darling," Sylvia said smoothly, "what are you talking about?" Gabriella's mouth curved into a smile with no warmth. "You know exactly," she said, "and you have no idea who you're dealing with." For a beat, Sylvia's eyes narrowed. Then she smiled the way people smile when they think they own the ending. The room exhaled and pretended nothing happened, because people love comfort more than truth. I sat through speeches I barely heard. I clapped at the right times. I watched Gabriella dance with Richard under lights that made everything look softer than it was. I watched Sylvia's hand on Richard's shoulder like a claim. When I finally got home, my arm still ached where Gabriella had grabbed me. I told myself the worst was done. At 7:03 the next morning, my phone rang. It was my director, Marissa. Her voice sounded like she'd swallowed glass. "Jade," she said, "I need you to sit down." "I'm sitting," I lied, staring at the crack in the paint above my sink. "The Holbrook Foundation called," she said. "They're pulling their grant, 80% of our budget, effective immediately." My chest went tight. "They can't. They just renewed." "They can," Marissa whispered. "They said your criminal history was newly discovered and incompatible with their mission. And they demanded your termination as a condition for any reconsideration. Sylvia didn't scream in ballrooms. She turned off the lights and watched you stumble. My phone buzzed with messages before Marissa even hung up. Gabriella, Richard. Missed calls stacking like panic. When I answered Gabriella, her breath was ragged. She froze our accounts, Gabriella said. Richard's too. The wedding gifts, the joint funds, everything. She called it a security measure. Richard's voice cut in, strained and furious. I didn't know she still had access. I'm calling my attorney. It's worse than I thought. And there's an ultimatum, Gabriella added, voice trembling. She says I either publicly cut ties with you and sign her marriage contract, clauses, penalties, reputation rules, or she leaks your file to the tabloids and ruins my career. She says she'll make sure everyone knows I'm connected to criminal trash. I closed my eyes. My first instinct was old and automatic, to step back, to disappear, to be the sacrifice again. But Gabriella's voice cracked in my ear. I can fix it, she sobbed. I'll go to the police. I'll confess. I was driving, Jade. I'll tell them. I'll clear you. For one ugly heartbeat, I wanted that. Wanted my life back. Wanted the record peeled off me like a label. Then I saw the shape of Sylvia's counterattack, the way she'd twist confession into scandal, paint us as frauds, destroy Gabriella's future, and call it justice. No, I said, and my voice came out sharp. You don't hand her the story. Gabriella sniffed. Then what do we do? I stared at my small kitchen, the cheap linoleum, the crack in the paint. 5 years of swallowing had taught me one thing: silence feeds predators. We make her talk, I said. We make her say what she is out loud. They came to my apartment an hour later. Richard looked like someone who'd finally realized the cage had been gilded. Gabriella looked wrecked, mascara smeared, hands shaking. I held them both in my tiny living room and laid out the plan without dramatics, because I couldn't afford theatrics anymore. We would go to Sylvia's house. We would act defeated. We would beg. We would let her enjoy herself, and we would record every word. 2 days later, we stood in Sylvia's foyer, and the air smelled like orchids and control. Sylvia descended the stairs in tailored elegance. Richard started to speak, but she lifted a hand. Not you, she snapped. You have no authority in this matter. His jaw clenched. Mother! Richard, she warned, and then her eyes flicked to me like a spotlight. Jade, how charming. Have you come to beg? I let my shoulders slump. I let my voice tremble. Please, I said. The crisis center. Those kids don't deserve this. Fire me if you want. Punish me if you want. But don't punish children. Sylvia's laugh was soft at first, almost musical, then it sharpened. You think this is about justice? She asked. About your little redemption arc? She stepped closer, perfume suffocating. Listen to me, Sylvia said quietly. In my world, law is an illusion for the poor. Real is money, real is reputation, and you are convenient. My pulse thundered, but I kept my face blank. You disobeyed me, she continued, warming to the sound of her own power. So I reminded you what disobedience costs. Even if Gabriella had been driving that night, I would still have erased you, because you are the perfect target, a defect I can display as a warning. Gabriella's breath hitched behind me. Richard went rigid. Sylvia's smile widened. Controlling a charity board is easy, she said. A donation here, a call there. They pretend it's values. It's not. It's fear. Stop, Richard said, voice low and shaking. Sylvia turned and froze, because she finally noticed what she'd been too arrogant to check. Richard was standing in the doorway of the sitting room, having heard every word. Behind him, his attorney hovered like a shadow. Sylvia's face drained of color. What is this? She snapped. I clicked off the recorder in my pocket. This, I said, lifting my eyes to meet hers, is you. For a moment, Sylvia tried to recover. Richard, this is family, she said, voice tight. No, Richard answered, and it sounded like grief. This is you." Sylvia's gaze darted to Gabriella, calculating. "If you proceed," she hissed, "you'll lose everything. Your life, your career, your marriage." Gabriella stepped forward, and her voice was steady in a way it had never been before. "You really don't want to go there," she said again, and this time it wasn't a warning, it was a promise. The next morning, Gabriella posted a video. No bridal glow, no filters, just her face bare and resolute. First she played the audio, the recording of Sylvia admitting to extortion, to manipulating funding, to destroying lives for reputation. Then Gabriella looked straight into the camera and did the one thing Sylvia never expected. She told the truth. "I caused the accident," Gabriella said. "My sister took the blame so I could go to college. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm taking responsibility." She included proof, messages, timestamps, old evidence that made denial impossible. She didn't do it to be noble. She did it to sever Sylvia's leverage like a rope. The internet did what it always does when handed a villain and a confession. It erupted. Sponsors fled. Boards panicked. Investors called lawyers. Sylvia's perfect image cracked in public, loud enough for everyone to hear. Within 24 hours, the Holbrook Foundation reversed their decision and issued a statement about review and reform. Donations flooded our crisis center so fast, Marissa called me crying, half laughing, not sure whether to be grateful or stunned. "We're expanding," she kept saying. "Jade, we're expanding." Richard cut ties with Sylvia in a way that wasn't romantic or clean. It was ugly, legal, final. He refused her money and her influence, and the narrative she'd always written for him. Gabriella faced court and took the consequences she'd avoided. Probation, community service, restitution. It didn't erase what happened, but it shifted the weight where it belonged. For the first time in 5 years, I watched her breathe like a person without a secret pressing on her throat. My record didn't vanish overnight. Systems don't do mercy quickly. But the truth moved through the paperwork like a slow tide. Motions, hearings, corrections. The stain on my name began to lift, not because the world suddenly became kind, but because Sylvia's cruelty had dragged everything into the light. A month later, someone knocked on my apartment door at night. The hallway light flickered. The air smelled faintly of fried food from downstairs. When I opened the door, Sylvia stood there. No entourage, no assistants, no perfect smile. Still expensive, still upright, but emptied out. Power had been her perfume, and without it she looked strangely ordinary. "I need to speak to you," she said. I leaned against the frame. "Do you?" She held out an envelope. "A check," she said, voice tight. Generous. In exchange for a statement. An apology. Something that suggests the recording was taken out of context. I stared at the envelope, then at her face. "You're offering me money to lie." Sylvia lifted her chin, summoning the old arrogance like armor. "I'm offering you a way forward," she said. "You lost years. This could—" "Stop," I said, and my voice was calm in a way that felt like victory. Her eyes flashed. "You ungrateful—" "No," I cut in. "I'm finally honest. I didn't take the envelope. I didn't touch it." "You thought my conviction made me trash," I said softly. "But the real trash is what's left of someone like you when the money is gone." Sylvia's mouth tightened, and for a second I saw something like fear, quick and ugly. Then it vanished. "Live with it," I said, and closed the door. I stood with my back against it, breathing, listening to my own heartbeat. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like someone who'd finally stopped being small. Reputation built on cruelty is glass. It shines until the first real odor, then it shatters. Truth is heavier. It hurts. But it doesn't break in your hands. And if I learned anything from being labeled and laughed at, it's this. You can survive being called trash. You just don't have to stay where they throw you.